All right.
There we go. Tell me, John, what's on your mind?
Death.
Actually,
What's on my mind?
mm-hmm.
You don't want to know. Didn't have to cut me off. Yeah, not that. Tommy Shelby's on my mind because we have it written on that board right there. Gangsters.
You think that he's somebody to emulate?
Tommy Shelby.
Yeah.
I think so to a certain capacity. Yeah. He kills people.
Yeah. Is that a good thing to emulate? What are the most admirable thing? What are the most admirable qualities of Tommy Shelby?
I think that he keeps his word.
He does.
Yeah, he keeps his word. I think that might be like the number one thing. It's like he says he's going to do, well, not always. I think sometimes he like maybe tricks people and stuff like that.
Yes.
And okay, he keeps his word to people who are loyal to him.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like in any way show non-loyalty to him,
Mm-hmm.
he will do with whatever he wants to you, basically. He won't keep his word. He'll trick you.
Mm-hmm.
He'll throw you a curveball, kill you.
To me, he's a highly intelligent, highly capable, dangerous man
Yes.
that is oftentimes outgunned, outmanned, but through his intellect, he's a Greek figure in that way, like a classical Greek hero
Mm-hmm.
that he every time it seems is able to outwit his opponent,
Mm-hmm.
not outgun them.
Yeah. It's like we talked about, it's like Odysseus
Yes.
character where he uses his intellect as his power. That's what he has is the smarts.
Yes. But he's also flawed. He has many weaknesses.
Women.
Women, yes.
Yeah, the older lady at one point said, "The one weakness you have, I know what it is, and it's women, basically."
Mm-hmm.
She told him that. He's like, I think she said something like, the only thing that could make you thrown off and be saying something that doesn't make sense or the wrong answer
Mm-hmm.
is you've been basically enamored by a woman.
Yeah.
And he was like,
Yeah.
which I feel like that's like my weakness.
Many men.
Yeah, many
Many
men.
great men.
Too many teardrops.
I'm going off of, though, something that I've been contemplating a lot is the quote by Alexander the Great. It's, I have met the enemy, and it is I. That the weakness, the ultimate test comes from within. The greatest opponent that you have to overcome is you.
Mm-hmm.
And I attribute that also to knowing yourself. And that it's very easy at times in life, maybe it goes through seasons, to forget who you are. And I think that that's a definition of true wisdom, is knowing who you are, what you stand for, what you fight for, what's important to you, and not getting lost in the mundaneness of everyday life or of the grind, the chase, the hunt for success.
Remember who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because you could argue, okay, we could say that Tommy Shelby's weakness is men, right? I mean, women.
Yeah.
Hope it's not men. Tommy Shelby's weakness is women, but is that a weakness? Like you can see it as like, oh, that's an external problem, but it's like, oh no, that's actually his weak. Like he allows that weakness,
Mm-hmm.
so it's an internal thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could say it's internal.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it stops within.
Yeah, Alexander the Great. I could I could go into Alexander the Great
Again.
again and
Yet again. Yeah.
I actually took a really intensive 4,000 level college class on just Alexander the Great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Like it was actually taken by history like graduates.
Mm-hmm.
And like basically I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm just taking this as an elective. And everybody was like, what, dude? And so the whole course material was, he's like, you need to get 7 books. And a lot of them were written by like Plutarch
Mm-hmm.
and like all those.
There's the one famous biography of his written by one of his contemporaries that
Exactly.
I read.
It was all of those basically. And yeah, it was like, there's a lot of lore behind it. Like his like mom or something like that. Like his dad was like peering in on his mom whenever like he was being born or something like that. And like there was like saw that like a lion or something ridiculous like that, like some kind of prophecy,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this would be a great person. And he had a interesting relationship with his mom. I remember that.
I don't remember much about his mother. I remember his relationship with his father,
Yeah.
Philip.
Mm-hmm. And then so the death of Philip allowed him to just, it was like one of the most perfect, like, I have set up all the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Now I die, and then you get to execute the pieces.
That's right.
It was like not a more perfect setup
For greatness.
Mm-hmm.
His teacher was Aristotle,
Yeah.
who was a pupil of Plato, who was a pupil of Socrates.
Yeah, I forget that too. Yeah, Aristotle. Yeah, that's like,
Mhm.
so he knew his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the first battle when they're going into Persia to cross that river,
Mm-hmm.
he just like charges first into the river, while like the enemies all on the other side with spears and arrows and all.
Yeah,
kinds
that's
of
what he
things
said
like
when
that.
his men were mutinying when they were far, far into Persian territory.
Yeah.
After Persia had fallen, the army had mutinied against him, and there's a famous speech, which is not verbatim exactly what he said, but immediately upon his oration, some of his scribes wrote down to try and get the best rendition of what it was, and that was one of the things that he said. If you want to compare battle scars, I'll show you mine. What's so admirable about him and some of these ancient heroes of antiquity, and even in Napoleon himself, the American Revolution, is that these men were on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't sending out the youth of a generation, like in World War I, World War II, to die,
Mm-hmm.
while they sat in their capitals and
wrote with a
plotted
pen,
and schemed. Yeah, exactly. Is that they led their men into battle. And I think that that's something that is so admirable about him, is one of the key characteristics of him is unparalleled leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Truly great. As far at a young age, when he was only 18, is when he ascended to being the king of Macedonia.
Mm-hmm.
Up until I think when he died was 36, an 18-year pilgrimage.
And I remember there was
For 20
something
years.
actually, like, to tie what you just said to Peaky Blinders. There was actually something, because of course Tommy Shelby fought in World War I. That was like
He
the
did.
whole thing.
He was a clay kicker.
And there was several points, especially in the beginning seasons, where he said like, "Oh yeah, you're just like, and you didn't even fight for your country."
That's right. Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of that mindset. Like
Mhm.
that was part of the propaganda machine, is like, you're not fighting for your country. Are you even a man?
Mhm.
Basically. And like if someone was like, well, I don't really want to die for the people who are just sitting there with pens and papers and telling me what I have to do.
Mhm.
I would want to die if they were there with me in the trenches.
Yeah, that's right.
Then I would want to do it with them. But
Yeah.
I think there was a large with the World War I soldiers where it was like, oh, like if you don't serve and join the army, Sam's got him, then you're like ostracized and shamed and
Mm-hmm.
cast off. So
Yeah. Well, the thing with World War I too is that that's one of the reasons why they call it the Lost Generation is if you read the book All Quiet on the Western Front, it really goes into detail about that of what the expectations were going into the war, even from, as the war was ongoing. Nobody knew what it was actually like to be on the front line. They had these pictures in their head of a grand Napoleonic war, of cavalry charges and the glory of warfare and fighting for your country, the honor that held. But then they went into the hell of what actually was trench warfare. And it was a lot of the older generation who was casting shame upon the youth, saying that this is your ultimate calling. This is your chance to achieve glory. Lo and behold, whenever they went, there's nothing as close to hell as I think in human history, besides maybe Stalingrad, as to the Western and Eastern fronts in World War I. They were sold a false promise.
Yeah, they had like the romanticized idea of, you're gonna like have a horse and shield and like sword and stuff like that, or even not that, even like just like musket guns. Like, everybody's gonna be in formation fighting for your country. Like, it was like a romanticized version.
Yes.
When all they got was just like no man's land shrapnel bombardment of like just blowing everyone to smithereens.
Yeah.
Not even, you don't even see the soldier on the other side that you're killing and battling. You don't even see him.
Yeah.
Basically. I mean, for some regards, yeah, but like a lot of it is just like, a mortar shell came and blew everyone up, and mustard gas.
Yeah. In some of the worst battles of the entire war, they were fought over months and months and months at a time with no relief, where you'd be fighting to take or to reclaim or to be pushed back, a quarter of a mile.
Yeah, yeah.
There was no ground really gained.
Where it's like Alexander, the king himself, is right beside me fighting.
Right.
So it's like, yeah.
It makes you question modern warfare.
Yeah, yeah. And then then it's like now it's just like drones.
Well, a lot of it is still men on the battle line too. That I have tremendous respect for veterans, modern day veterans.
Yeah.
Things that they've endured, and especially with the concept of why are we even here? This is a pointless war that we're fighting right now. What's wrong with the audio?
No, I was going to move this a little.
Oh.
Self-centered. Boop. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like the... I mean, I guess you could say the senators, though, in Rome would be like, you guys go fight over here. So it is, maybe you just can't escape in a sense. But I think that's one of the reasons why Alexander was so successful, is he was there himself to lead.
Look at Caesar.
So effective, yeah. Julius Caesar. If there was a draft right now, what would you do? It's a hard question.
If I was drafted?
Yeah, right now.
I mean, God forbid that it would ever happen. I would not fight. I would try my best not to fight. I don't believe in the justification of fighting in any of these conflicts abroad.
Except if it was like a domestic war on our turf, then you would be like, okay, I would consider it.
Sure. But that's very, very different than going and fighting for, to take Ukraine.
Yeah.
Or the Gaza Strip, or the fall of, Syria, or any of these places.
Getting put like in a sardine can, like shipped off. Here you go. Go get yourself some shrapnel.
Yeah, and that's why I have tremendous respect. I love the soldier. I hate the war.
Yeah. Love the soldier, hate the war.
Yeah. The soldiers deserve ultimate respect. They do. But now I think the The real warfare is cultural. It's internal. It's fighting for the soul of America. But
Soul
it's
of the nation.
right. But it's first. How could you even do that if you don't know who you are? How could
Yeah.
you know? How could you fight for something when you can't even stand for something?
Exactly.
And that's the biggest thing.
Or stand for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you're just
If you don't know who you are and what you stand
oh,
for.
full circle.
Yeah.
Full circle. You don't know who you are. Remember who you are. How can
Mhm.
you fight for anything that's good for your country when you don't even know who you don't even have an identity of what your country is
Or who you are.
or who you are.
What do you actually believe?
Well, a country is a bunch of individuals all kind of agreeing that we have a general who we are.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes the country. Like there's like,
The reason, though, why Athens, one of the great pivotal moments in human history in Western civilization, was the Battle of Marathon in the Persian Wars. After the fall of Sparta in Thermopylae, with the fall of the 300, the armies of Athens and Persia met at Marathon in what was still to this day probably one of the greatest military victories of human history, where the Athenian triremes, right? Isn't that what it was called?
Yeah,
were outnumbered by the Persians, something ludicrous like 10-1. They had the numbers, they had the armies, they had the gold, they had the wealth, they had, the jewels of Arabia and all of this stuff, but Athens had something to fight for, whereas the Persians were subjects to a ruthless, calculating dictator. The Athenians stood as one man next to another, as the individual. It was the battle between the individual and the tyranny of the masses. And the Athenians won. The reason why they won is not because they had superior warfare, because they were greater warriors, although maybe they were greater warriors because they knew who they were individually. They glorified the self, the mind, the self-identity, and that is the fundamental pillar of the West, is the one. One, all for one for all, like the Three Musketeers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the 300 actually did that to allow the Athenians to escape.
Mm-hmm.
So they sacrificed themselves for Athens, for greater Greece.
Right.
They actually were like, oh, the Athenians need to escape, and we're the only ones that can help them do it.
Right.
In that moment. So they put down their internal differences for their external unification.
Yeah. But you'll never be able to fight for something as much as that which you believe in. And really knowing what you believe in and who you are. Like, what are your core values? You've been taught up to a certain point in your life, you accept things as they're told to you and as they're taught to you. But the next point in evolution is questioning what you've been told and actually identifying beyond, this is what I believe because I've been told to believe it. This is what I believe because in myself, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I've grappled with these things. And this is actually what I believe.
Yeah.
It's like you have to come full circle. You have to build your foundation of yourself on a strong foundation, on pillars.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's American has had Christian principles, and America had a strong nuclear family at one point, which was a heavily American thing. Like, oh, the nuclear family, and then you had the counterculture, which was just like, oh, like, be whoever you want to be kind of thing, away from the nuclear family. But in modern times, they're actually saying that now the counterculture is actually the nuclear family. Like, oh, I want the nuclear family.
Yeah.
That is the new counterculture.
Well, yeah, and we're having to rediscover those things for ourselves. We've gone so far in one direction that we're having to regroup.
How do you think America got away from the nuclear family?
I don't know.
A lot of people say that the nuclear family was one of the core things that America believed in. was a strong family unit
Mm-hmm.
of like family values, marriage, sticking together, loyalty, stability, all those kinds of things. Monogamy.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that it's like radical individualism, maybe is what it's called, or something like that, where there's a big push today with the ultimate good is pursuing your subjective truth rather than an object reality. And that's why the nuclear family was probably so strong, is because it was built on solid Christian values.
Mm-hmm.
And as the country gets away from that, those things are put into question.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. Will the nation survive?
For now, I think, yeah.
There's a book I got. It's a popular book. It's called The Soul of a Nation or something like that. And it was written by a Protestant woman, an American Protestant woman in the 1800s. And she single-handedly, her whole critique on the battle of the soul of the nation basically is us getting away from Christian principles. That's her singular thesis.
Yeah, it's funny when you look back on some of these, like, where did these ideas originate from that we're facing today? And a lot of them actually go very far back to the Enlightenment. Maybe that's a core, what's the term? Like a touchstone moment in history that shaped a lot of things that were to come. But I remember even when there was a collection of bishops before Vatican I. Vatican II was in the 60s, where it basically remapped and realigned the Catholic Church's values and how the church would operate based on theological principles, all that jazz. But Vatican I was in the 1800s. And even before that, what led to it is that there was a series of bishops from around the world who were critiquing then what they viewed as like they said something like the pagan church. Like the church is turning into a collection of pagans. All the way back then. And you can think of the critique on just Christianity in general as you would see it now and things that could be done better. They were talking about these things over 150 years ago.
That's a whole episode on of itself, is the critique of Christianity and how it should be done.
Yeah.
Like, we could talk all about Catholic Church and Protestants and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe that was a good show.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, we're about at 24 minutes, so
We can stop.
cool. Laid up. All right. There we go. There was your